this little girl like had to blow her nose and she didn't want to, and the mom helped her blow it and she had a booger, and she just had this massive meltdown over the fact that she wanted her booger. And then the mom was like, I just need to get a meltdown, and gave it back to her. And I'm all, you gave it back.
Okay.
Welcome to Raising Healthy Families with Moms Meet and Kiwi. We're giving you the tools to enjoy the beauty and chaos of life with little ones in the healthiest way possible.
The 10th annual Moms Meet WOW Summit is heading to sunny SoCal November 10th through the 11th, 2023. Get your tickets now for 2 days of inspiration, education, and product sampling from your favorite Better For You brands. Visit momsmeet.link/summit23 to register now.
Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Becca Slocum, and today I am joined by child development expert Vanessa Kahlon to learn how to build better relationships with our kids and guide them through the behaviors and big challenges common with raising little ones. Vanessa is the author of How to Do Parenting with Confidence and owner and operator of Kahlon's Family Services School, which is KFS for short. They are located in the Bay Area, and they provide care and guidance to families of children with learning and behavioral challenges and needs. Welcome, Vanessa. Thank you for being here.
Welcome. This is, I'm really excited about this. So thank you for having me.
Yes, we are excited to jump right into this conversation, and that's what we're going to do. So can you start off by sharing with us a little bit about the work that you do at your practice?
So my practice is really about meeting the child where they are emotionally, and then also physically and spiritually. What I say is because really it's getting to know the child. Everything is individualized to the child's needs. So not one approach is always going to work with every child. So it's really understanding that and understanding the child's needs and making sure the child feels heard. At the same time, that also the child understanding that the parent is also working on something too. Because I think a lot of times, we put a child in a room to see a therapist, and all of a sudden it's like, well, what message are we sending the child? Something's wrong with me, right? So it's really, how do we get everyone together in the family going, we're all working on something, because it is a family dynamic, and how do you have, open communication and things like that that are healthy for the family.
Can you also elaborate a little bit on some of the additional challenges that the parents of kids with special needs might be facing as far as, behavior and development?
I think it depends on what is going on for the parent emotionally. I think you have a child, and then all of a sudden you have this plan and you have these things, and all of a sudden you have a kid that's like, not listening to you all the time, and is going to question everything you say or do. And it's like, oh, just do what I say sometimes.
Yep.
Right. And it gets really frustrating, but yet they're their own individual. Right. They're their own beings. And so then how do you have that? And it's hard for some parents, right? Because they also want to be the parents that are like, I told you what to do. You're supposed to listen to me. And then my kids are like, well, why? Why did you do that? Well, why do I have to do? I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense to me. And most of the time the kids are right.
Okay.
So, if you really go past some of the thoughts, these kids are so insightful, right? You have these kids that are like these little beings that, there's no filter. And that's what's great about them. I think as adults, we just start to filter and filter and filter. And then it's like, well, why can't we say that? It doesn't make sense.
Right.
But I feel like you can. It's a interesting concept with parents, when it's like the parents has an idea of what their child should be versus who they are.
Right.
And not seeing them.
Okay. So this is kind of going to segue us into our next, the topic that we're going to really dive into, but I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm curious to see what your response is to this. So are you a believer in gentle parenting? I know that that's like a term that gets thrown around a lot, and everybody has kind of their own definition of it. So maybe let's hear your reaction to that, and if you could elaborate a little bit on that.
No, totally. Listen, I think every child is different. So you can't use one approach for everybody. And gentle parenting is great in the sense of like you're acknowledging the feelings and you're doing all of that. But to me, like if you were coming into my practice and like what I'm doing, most likely gentle parenting it's not going to work with my kids. They're just way too smart. They're going to figure out ways to manipulate the situation. Then they're going to find out ways to do things in a way that, is counterproductive. And, for example, like I'm all about follow through and being consistent, and also, yes, understanding that there are these emotions and these feelings going on, but then what's the plan once you acknowledge that, right? So like, what is the plan moving forward? How to make things different?
Sure.
So that's where I come up with like the 3 R's, which is when I see something, we redo it, right?
Okay.
We do the rewind, and then we do the repair. So we repair the relationship after it's been broken versus I think a lot of times parents, so my first book is called Shut Up and Parent, by the way. And
Love.
this is because we talk too much.
Okay.
And like sometimes I think it causes more anxiety. So when you have certain personalities that you want to keep processing and like talking about these feelings or like, oh, how kept going, it just keeps going and going and going, and you're not seeing a change. And I feel like
Mhm.
it's actually increasing a child's anxiety.
Okay. This is,
Um,
I love, like, I'm really excited about this conversation because I have 2-year-old twins that are in that like really fun, they're super curious about everything. They hate being told no. Like that's just that stage where it's like, I don't know how to navigate this. So, and hearing you say like we talk too much, it's like the best slap in the face possible, but it's so true. It's like if I would just take a step back and like let them have their moment for a second. And I want you to like talk about, what do we do? Our next question to go through is like, how do we handle our children's meltdowns? What do we do when they are just like next level not having it? And myself as a parent, I would love to hear your response to that because I'm in the throes of this right now.
no, totally. I think, it's not reacting.
Okay.
So, but this is also this is, again, it goes down to every kid is different. So I had a kid exploding, like a 9-year-old screaming at me, like massive screaming.
Mhm.
And I'm just sitting here and I'm like, I'm just not going to talk like that. I'm going to do this extinction thing. I'm just going to ignore it. And that's what we're going to do. But it actually escalated him.
Okay.
Because it was almost like he was so anxious and he wanted some response. So, and then afterwards, so again, like it goes down to like you talking to your child and knowing what makes sense for them. But
Mhm.
for me, my normal reaction is like, let me know when you're calm and then we'll talk. And I just
Okay.
sit there. I'm not going to put a kid in a different room. I'm just going to sit there because I am the person that's going to help the child self-regulate themselves. So
Mhm.
I'm going to be there with them. But I'm also going to say, when you're ready to talk, let's talk. Again, when a child is so escalated, even at 2, they're not understanding anything.
Right.
100%. And I know some people are like, I'm going to hold the child if they're crying and like not listening because I'm helping them calm down. It's not reinforcing the behavior. It's like once the child goes from here to here, what's the point? We can't
Mhm.
get them to focus and we can't get them to listen anyways. We need to calm down. And then when we do the rewind is we go back to what happened before and we do the whole situation over again.
Okay.
Right. So if you're saying, hey, it's time to clean up, and they're like ignoring you, ignoring you, ignoring you, I do 2 times, and the 3rd time I'm going to go in and I'm going to help them to clean up,
Mhm.
right? I'm not going to sit there and process, well, why didn't you clean up? What about this? No, clean up is clean up.
Right. Right.
It's time to clean up. Again, you get into the situation where you're going to have, you're negotiating with a 2-year-old. And I always say, when you're negotiating with a 2 or 3-year-old, you lost the battle. You're
Yeah.
done. Like they're it. And it's
It
only
sounds
going to get
even
harder.
funny saying it, like, well, you can't really, but okay.
I'm also not, I'm not like, I sound like I'm so rigid, but I'm really not. I mean, if you're doing a schedule at home, well,
Mhm.
I mean, sometimes I think I'm rigid, but I'm not. But when you're doing a schedule at home, does it matter if they brush their teeth or put their shirt on first? Or
Right.
these are the things you think about, right? You pick and choose your battles.
Mhm.
And I
Hmm.
think that's where it comes down to with parents is like pick and choosing it, not sticking to it, but sticking to like what you're going to follow through with. But
Right.
again, with your twins, like you're only asked twice, the 3rd time, you're going to help them.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then, yeah, and then one shift you help them and then you wait them out and say, okay, can you at least put one thing away? And again, they're learning to listen to you because I don't think people realize if you keep asking over and over again, what are you teaching?
I mean, you're just letting them know that they can get away with continuing to not do the action.
Right. You're teaching them not to listen.
Right.
So
Hmm.
like, I don't even, you're actually teaching. Think about it. It's all behavior modification in a weird way. So if like you keep repeating yourself and there's no follow through, they're like, oh, great. I don't have to do this. Let's wait
Right.
till she explodes.
Right. Well, and I think that happens often, and I'm not just speaking from experience. We don't need to tell the listeners about that. um I did hear you make or comment on, we hear the term self-regulate. So can you elaborate a little bit on what that means and kind of how we can, I know the whole listening thing is part of it, but how can we help our children to understand what that means and also build on that skill?
Right. So a self-regulation for me, right, is being able, the child's able to calm themselves down, able to take a break, is able to have these coping skills in the world right now that, walking into a classroom, are they going to have a panic attack? Are
Mhm.
they, if they're going into a social situation, like a lot of times kids play really well with just another child, but then you have add a third kid in there and there's like that social anxiety or other things. So to me, especially your little ones, it's like modeling, taking a break, taking deep breaths,
Mhm.
again, coming up with a plan beforehand. So you want to make sure that the child knows what's coming up. So for some kids that are really anxious, you're saying, okay, we're going to go to the grocery store. And then all of a sudden, you're like, oh, I need to stop at the bank. I need to do all these things, but it was never discussed to the child.
Right.
So again, communication is key
Mhm.
on preparing the child to understand what's coming up. And then that to me is like a child being able to advocate for themselves of like, okay, I need a break right now.
Mhm.
And
I
having
like that. I like that you mentioned, that form of communication, because I don't think we always think about what the child is going through in that situation. So you made, the going to the grocery store and the bank reference. I think that's really important, because you're even children with, they have their social anxieties or any whatever it might be. They know, okay, we are going to the grocery store, but to completely derail that and add in, to us, it's no big deal. It's like, oh, I have to stop at the bank, but it really alters the entire like path of their day. But we don't think about it like that because we're adults and that's just what we do. So communicating that to them, oh, we have to stop at the bank before we go to the store. Oh, I love that. I mean, I'm going to sit and think about that, because I do that all the time. I tell my kids we're going one place and then I immediately am like, oh, we got to stop here too.
but also it's showing, a lot of times kids, by the time I get them, they don't trust adults.
Mhm.
So where does that
Okay.
come from? Like even teachers too. It's like, if it says 5 minutes, if 5 minutes is 5 minutes, that's great. It's 5 minutes, 15 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Like things to think about as a parent, because kids really um pay attention to your words.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And time is so abstract in another sense too. So they don't understand one way or the other. But as they get older, they're like, okay, mom just really said 5 minutes, but this is really 30 minutes. And like she didn't mean it.
Right. And to us, again, I feel like being the adult in the situation, it's really easy to brush that off and just be like, well, it was another 10 minutes, like it's okay, but it's not. And I mean, I guess you can look at it on the flip side too. As adults, we do value our time. And, if somebody's running 10 minutes late to a meeting, you're like, okay, well, you just wasted 10 minutes of my time. And then you do that to your own kids. And it's like, well, you're right. You're going to lose that trust with them. So that's a really interesting way to look at it too. I really appreciate that outlook on it.
And that also causes a lot of anxiety. I don't think people realize that anxiety in children shows up in ways of control.
Okay.
Right. So anxiety comes in as like, okay, mom's going to sit here, dad's going to sit here, or whoever, like whatever partner's sitting where,
Mhm.
down to no, you're going to drink this and you're going to eat this. And a lot of times kids that have that sense of control, it's like they don't feel like they have control in other ways. And that is a sign of like a kid that might be a little bit more anxious. Right.
Okay.
They have to have a plan of like what's going to happen next. And then they're going to tell you how it's going to be. I love it when parents like, oh, my kid's so independent. It's great. I'm all, oh, okay, here we go. Like, I'm all, oh yeah, she'll have a fit if like we get the cup because she wants to get the cup, and then they want the red cup and not the blue cup. And it's like I'm already seeing these signs of like, okay, we got to work through this, because
Yeah.
I'm set it up and go, you know what, right now I'm going to pick a color cup.
Mhm.
But I prep them beforehand. I'm not going to just say, here, no, you get the blue one.
Okay.
There's that communication you have, which is all these tips are in my book, and like language and very specific things to do to help a child that, is having a hard time and self-regulating or
Mhm.
melting down. I mean, I had a kid one time, this is one of my favorite stories, a parent, and this is recently,
Mhm.
and this little girl like had to blow her nose and she didn't want to, and the mom helped her blow it and she had a booger, and she just had this massive meltdown over the fact that she wanted her booger. And then the mom was like, I just need to get house meltdown, and gave it back to her. And I'm all, you gave it back to
No. Okay. I
and
feel like you tell these stories and like if you're not a parent or someone that works with children, you would never believe it. But as a parent, I'm like, oh gosh, like this happens and it's gross.
you're like, I just want to get past this meltdown, because as we're
Right.
in like 30 minutes, I'm exhausted and I'm tired. Right. But I always tell parents, I'm all, that 30 minutes, the next one's be 20 minutes. Then the next time
Mhm.
it's going to be 15 if you're consistent. Now,
Right.
if you're changing your behavior pattern of like, well, maybe one day I'm gonna let them have it, and the next day I'm not, and you're inconsistent, then they don't know what it is. So then they escalate the behavior 10 times worse until they figure out, where's my boundary? Where am I? How am I safe? And where am I at?
So can we pause for a minute? I would love to go back to that booger story. What did you tell the parent in that situation? What's the best way to navigate that?
I said, are you serious? You gave her back a booger? Like, I mean, I just threw it back at her. I told her I'm going to put it on my podcast. I mean, I laugh about it. Like, she's still my client. And she's like, I just didn't know what to do.
Okay. All right.
I mean, like, I'm very that blunt. I'm like, let's think about this for a second. Who won in that situation? And I said, so what is a different way we could have done that? So, but this is also a kid that's going to go, I'm going to go sit on something. You tell her no, and then she's going to go back on it. And she just keeps going. Right.
Right.
But you have to be consistent with that personality.
Right. Oh,
I
wow.
mean,
That's one that I'm going to remember for a long time. So, okay, shifting it a little bit to and it could be related to control, and that could just be me not understanding. So let's talk about kids that maybe throw their food or they hit. I know right now in our house, I'm having an issue with one of my girls biting, and she just gets really frustrated and worked up. She doesn't know how to channel her frustration, and she'll bite her sister. And I'm like, we don't do that. And I know that you talk about not having a big reaction, which is fantastic. And I'm terrible at that, because I'll be in the living room or in the kitchen. The girls are in the living room and a fight breaks out. And the first thing I want to do is just scream and be like, what are you doing? Like, stop.
Right.
So can you talk to us about how to, especially even in the parent situation, like what can we do to kind of self-regulate ourselves and our reactions in those moments?
Well, first thing first on biting, how you get out of a bite. Number one is that you make sure the head is secure.
Okay.
You hold it back, and then you push in. So if you push in, it opens the jaw.
Hmm.
And it
Okay.
pulls. So you don't want to pull. So that right there is going to get the reaction. She's not going to bite you again, usually after this.
Right.
It's going
Okay.
to probably not like shock her a little bit, but don't say anything and don't do anything. And you just push in. So if she's coming for your shoulder, secure the head, and then you just kind of push in to open it. Because what you don't want to do is take the skin.
Right.
Right?
Okay. Now what happens if they're biting another kid?
So that's something that like you just have to like work through it and like do a social story on that case, because they're just so young on that piece.
Right.
And that also could be a kid that has or like some oral issues going on, and so sometimes like having something a little bit harder to chew on, like an apple or other things like that, to give the stimulation if that's what they're craving. Because it could be a sensory, or is it a behavior? That's where you have to look at the whole issue of like what it can be. And the thing that I would do is like there's books that you can do on like we're not biting, and there's those situations. But I think when it comes down to like when they're biting you, the adults, you can handle that by pushing in and making sure you're safe. But also, I usually get bit once, and then the child never bites me again.
Okay, interesting.
I get bit a lot.
Rough line of work.
And I picked it and I love it. Like, I'm like, my job is different every day. I love it.
But you know what? You're the right person to be doing the job then. That's all that means. Okay, so you have these like big emotional experiences, the kid's throwing a tantrum or they're throwing their food. Why does underreacting work so effectively on children?
The underreacting is because you want the child to feel safe and secure. So when everyone's out of control, then who's in control?
Okay.
Right. So if a parent is screaming and yelling, and then it shocks the child, and then the child gets very insecure and not sure, then it just unravels and it keeps going. But when you are like, again, like, let me know when you're calm. Really, I mean, there's some one-liners I use all the time that I'm just like, let me know when you're calm, and I'm just right here. But until I'm not going to do it, because I'm not going to get in a battle. I'm not going to get in a verbal exchange. I'm not going to get into another thing. If they're hitting, I will grab a child's hand and say, we're not going to hit, and I'm not going to let you hit me. Okay. Because I need to make sure that, I want to make sure that they're safe emotionally, that they're not, if they're hurting their friends, then they feel bad afterwards. So then we're looking at their self-esteem dropping. Now, if they're hitting me, well, whatever, I don't care. But like, I work through it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's like, we're not going to do it. And then again, we go back into redoing it. So the question that I ask is like, what behavior do you want to see from your child? That's the teaching.
Okay.
So for example, if your daughter's going up, your two girls, you said? Right. So if one of them, one's doing blocks, the other one wants to play, and that one
Mhm.
comes in and knocks them over, right?
Yeah.
And then, because that's her way to play, because she's like, I don't know how to ask. Then if
Hmm.
I go back, I'm like, oh, you know what? I can see you wanted to play. Let's ask, can I play? Or get even sound like, I don't know what the language is where
Yeah.
they are. And it's just remodeling it that way and then redoing it again and then helping them rebuild again.
Okay.
So it's always teaching. Like, I only say no when it's a safety issue.
Okay.
I need them to know, like, if I see a kid, like, I have runners sometimes.
Hmm.
If you're like, if I see them trying to run, I'm gonna grab them.
Yeah,
And
sure.
that's a no.
Yeah, but
Right?
it's good to hear that because I think it's so easy to say no. Like it is that, and that might be the easy way out, but I think thinking of it from a safety perspective is a really, really insightful way to look at it because it's like, okay, if they're not in danger, then we can kind of rework the language so that they're not hearing no 24/7. Because I think, especially for really young children, or I mean, I guess any age, really, nobody likes to be told no. So like reworking that conversation a little bit, that's a good way to look at it. And it's like, okay, well, they're not in danger. So let's figure
Right.
out a different way to navigate this.
Right. And
Huh.
that's something, yeah. I mean, and I also, and I know this is kind of weird too. Like some of the kids that are younger, I don't use their name as much
Okay.
because I also want them, when I do use their name, I get their focus.
Okay.
Right.
Interesting. So when
And
you just chat,
yeah.
face to face. Okay.
Yeah, and, like, a lot of times, like, if you're looking at, like, a child too, I'm always touching the shoulder. If I'm giving them directions, I'm always giving them a little bit more input on their body, so I know that
Hmm.
they're focusing and listening. Because not everyone's gonna make eye contact, and
Okay.
it doesn't mean that if you are not making eye contact, you're not listening. It just means
Hmm.
that it's just a different way of, like, taking in information.
Okay. Sure. Oh,
So
that's a good way to look at it too. See, I
right.
love doing these conversations. I learned so much. Um,
Right.
right, right.
The
I do
booger
want to ask
story.
you, what was that?
I'm the booger story.
Listen, I'll be telling that to like my friends later, I promise. I do want to talk about shifting over a little bit more towards like discipline versus punishment.
Okay.
So I think we hear that discipline is better, and I'll put that in quotes, than punishment, but the difference is super confusing to us. So do you want to elaborate on that a little bit? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so for me, I'm looking at, I don't do consequences.
Okay.
At all. Like, I don't
Okay.
think consequences work. I think it's a waste of time. I think it's a waste of energy. It just doesn't work. But
So can you give an example of what you mean by consequence though? Is that like a threat? Like
yeah, like
if you don't.
I don't take things away.
Okay.
Right. So I guess that's what I'm gonna say. Like, I don't take things away. So to me, I'd rather have a natural consequence, right? So
Hmm.
like maybe you hurt your friend's feelings, your friend doesn't want to play with you right this second.
Right.
That's a natural consequence I'm looking for.
Okay.
Right? I'm looking at that, like, yesterday we had a social skills group. One kid hit one kid, the other one hit another one. I'm all, "Well, what'd you guys learn?" Right? Like, I'm sorry, but it's true. And
Right.
then we go into the rewind. Let's do that again. What could we have done
Hmm.
differently? How do we repair the relationship?
Right.
Always about repairing everything and redoing it all over again. So why
Hmm.
am I gonna take something away if I haven't really repaired it?
Okay.
But once the repair is done, to me, it's over. Then we move
Yeah,
on.
that makes sense. Okay. Again, something that I would have never thought of. I'm the queen of being like, hey, if you do that again, we're not going to do this, but it doesn't work, which makes a
I know,
lot
it
of
never
sense.
works.
It's not working.
And
Okay.
it just, yeah, and I mean, and if you're not consistent on it too. So the one thing about my school, which is really different. So a lot of my kids come in because they have behavioral issues.
Hmm.
Now, when you approach me, I'm like, okay, so I'm just letting you know what happens at school stays at school, what happens at home that stays at home. And they're like, what do you
Hmm.
mean? I go, I'm not reporting anything to you. Like, excuse me, it's my kid. I go, you're not a therapist. Once a behavior happens at school, it's fixed, it's worked on, they leave.
Okay.
It's done. Why are we going to hash it out again? I think the fact that we talk too much, we want to hash it out, and we always want to like process all this stuff, it doesn't help the child. So
Now,
one,
will you have conversations with the parent independently without the child? Or is
I
it
don't
just
tell them
completely?
any, I tell them
Okay.
everything, have a great day. Thank you. Goodbye.
Okay. That is such a, I mean, to me, a new approach. Like it's very,
No,
I
yeah,
kind of think I like it though. I mean, obviously, if like the behaviors are continuing at home, that's like a, okay, what can we be doing differently at home
100%.
situation?
And that's where I go into the home, and that's when we figure out a plan, and I call them family meetings. But
Hmm.
to me, why am I going to call you when I know we all know we're working on impulsivity issues. We're
Right.
working on these things. So why am I going to sit here and tell you? I'm going to tell you all the stuff your kid's doing well.
Mhm.
Because by the time I get a child, parents on PTSD from all the phone calls.
Right.
And
Right.
like, and I just had a meeting with a new family, and the school made them cancel their family vacation. The kid's 5 and hit another kid. And I guess, but I'm like, so my question is, did he hit because he was being mean, or did he hit because he couldn't control it? And he can't control it, so why are we punishing it?
Right.
Have to teach.
Right. Wow. Oh, that's a lot.
So this is why I don't, what happens at home stays at home, what happens at school stays at school. My kids know this.
Mhm.
Like, and I remember one time one of my older kids sent me an email at nights, and I'm all, I don't know how to deal with this because he knows it's on Tuesday. And so I walk in to school and I go, can we talk? He's like, it was on Tuesday. We're done. And like, we move it. And I'm like, he's right. I have to keep my word, my part of the bargain. I said,
Wow, that's really, look
anything.
at that though. That's your like coaching in action right there. That's really, really cool.
Yeah. And to me, like, parents aren't therapists. And I don't, when a kid does something, they feel bad about themselves, and then the behavior continues because then
Right.
you're talking about it. And then it's like, oh, when you go to school, don't hit, don't do all these things. Well, what did you
Mhm.
just remind them to do? You just
Right.
reminded them
Exactly.
to do
You're
all those
reminding them
things.
to do it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Instead of saying, oh, can we try to make better choices? See the difference in language?
Right. Huh. Okay. This is like, I have to like rework my entire parenting method.
It's all in the book. You got it. It's good.
I will be ordering it like in 5 minutes. Guys, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how to use mindfulness and a little bit of yoga to connect with and nurture our kids.
Life with kids is busy, so if you can't squeeze in that quick trip to the grocery store between mealtime and nap time, or you're too busy chauffeuring the kids to afternoon activities to pick up those last-minute dinner items, Instacart has you covered. You can get the products you love from your local store and even shop all your favorite stores in a single order. Plus, Instacart will hand-select your items based on your preferences, only picking the freshest produce. And you can get delivery to your door in as fast as 1 hour. Instacart even highlights deals in your area to help you save money. Get free delivery on your first order over $35. Follow the link in our show notes to let Instacart know we sent you and to help support our show. Instacart, the perfect shopping solution for busy families everywhere.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. So I want to kind of jump into some different methods that we can use to maybe break out of bad behaviors or calm down in different situations. So what are some common parenting behaviors that you see often that you would like parents to move away from?
I think the empty threats.
Okay.
The empty threats is something that, like, the child doesn't learn, that the trust is being taken away.
Mhm.
They know that they can, like, get away with certain things to a certain extent. It actually doesn't help the parent at all.
Okay.
Right. And also having a consequence that goes with what is going on in the situation, right? Versus, like, people are like, oh, we're not going to go to Disneyland or do something really big. But
Mhm.
like, have the consequence be what it is. Not even a consequence, but like, because I don't do much, but like, whatever's going to happen afterwards,
Mhm.
be part of it.
So can you
Uh,
give an example of that?
like, if I tell kids, for screen time, if they have a hard time getting off the screen, I prep them before, and I'm like, okay, are we going to try to make the right choice? And I don't know if kids, maybe they throw the iPad or they have this huge tantrum. But I
Mhm.
said, okay, now if we can get off, then tomorrow you get it. Now if we can't, then we're just going to take a break for a day.
Okay.
Right. So I'm keeping it around the iPad versus like, okay, well, we're just not going to go to X, Y, and Z later.
Right. Okay. That makes sense though. Because then, they're going to want to adjust that behavior because it's related to what they're already doing. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, like clearly I'm interested in this and I don't want to lose out on this or have to take a break from this. I like that. So, I mean, as parents, we have a lot of things that we can work on. I'm learning there's a lot of things that I can work on, in the past half an hour conversation that we've had so far.
Right.
But what do you think are some of the best ways that we can strengthen our relationship with our children?
I really, one of the things I have parents do when I start with them, and it's actually one of the hardest things to do, is do 5 minutes a day of just following their lead. And that
Okay.
means not asking questions. Like, you want to ask, like, what color is this? What shape is this? If they're younger, or like, how was your day? But like, really, like, taking that 5 minutes and not asking any direct questions, and say, hey, what do you want to do? And just really being there. And
Mhm.
that play piece is actually very difficult. but that
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes will eventually be 7 minutes, but that's the time that you have quality time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I talk to parents and they're like, well, I do have quality time. We have pizza every Friday night. And I'm like, no, actually that's a ritual. So like
Okay.
it's labeling it quality time,
Mm-hmm.
labeling that we're going to spend some special time together. And like, what do you want to do? And hear them out. And that's where you can start to understand a little bit more of your child's needs and get
Mm-hmm.
to know them as their own self. But it's
I
really
like
difficult
that.
to do.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it is. We had on one of our other episodes, we had discussed there's this, theory where there's 9 minutes of the day that are the most important with your kids. And it's the first three when they wake up, the three when they come home from school, and then the 3 minutes before they go to bed. And it's like, yeah, that's great. But adding in the component of not asking questions, I think is huge because
Right.
as you're saying that, I'm sitting here thinking about, when I play with my kids, I make sure, okay, put your phone down. Like, don't have your phone in the room with them, or I'm going to be on my phone. So making sure my phone is out of the room. But then what am I doing? I'm playing 20 questions with my kids like every 2 minutes because you said, like, what shape is this? What color is this? That is what I do every day of my life. So, taking those like quality time minutes, but removing all of it's almost like a bombardment if you think about it. Like, it's like, I feel like I'm overstimulating them by asking them 900 things, and then giving them the chance to lead is huge. I love that. I think that that is so important. And again, another thing I will be taking away and practicing in my own day to day, because I've never thought about it like that, but like letting them just kind of lead the way, I think is really, really cool. So thank you for sharing that.
And you get that imagination piece and where they are and
Mm-hmm.
like how they're seeing the world. And that I
Mm-hmm.
think is really important to be able to like understand who your child is.
Right. Yeah. Oh,
They watch everything we do.
I am learning that very quickly. Sometimes in a frightening sense.
Well, you
um,
said that yesterday, Mom. I don't know what to tell you.
right. I know. I'm like, well, you did see me do that. So let's talk about your book for a second, the How to Do Parenting with Confidence. So you explore how to use mindfulness practices to connect with your kids. So how can parents go about doing this and kind of incorporating that with the entire family?
So yoga is my thing. And
Mm-hmm.
yoga is what I've discovered through the years is because a lot of parents don't know how to play.
Mm-hmm.
Play is hard. Like it is just not everyone's thing, but yoga is something very universal.
Okay.
And it's like downward dog is always downward dog, and you can pretend to be a dog.
Sure.
And there's that mind body connection and the breathing that goes with it. So there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
partner yoga poses you can do that are fun, even putting your kids up on your legs and being Superman and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. But I feel like the more that you could do, I like touch and
Okay.
that kind of, touching the shoulders when you're talking to them sometimes and knowing that you're that because a lot of my kids are really anxious and just understanding where their body is in space is really
Mm-hmm.
helpful. So,
Okay.
yeah, and even having, like families having heads on each belly and
Mm-hmm.
practice belly breathing and have everyone on the floor. That is one of my favorite activities.
Okay.
And like you have to follow each other's lead
Mm-hmm.
and then even siblings being able to like to do partner yoga and like being able to work together versus one personality taking over the other one or trying to control it. It's like, no, how do you work together? Like each of person holding one leg up.
Mm-hmm.
I do this with young kids too, and it's like being able to be in your body and mindful of that piece.
Mm-hmm. Now, have you had experiences? I'm sure you have, and maybe the better way to ask this is, could you elaborate on a time where it just wasn't working? Like whatever you were doing, whatever mindfulness piece you were trying to integrate into, either teaching or coaching or however you want to call it, it just was not having the effect that you wanted it to have. Then what?
Yeah, no, never.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Amazing.
I'm assertive. Like,
No, this is good. That's what we want to hear.
I'm sorry. That's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like, well, I'm like, people say I'm aggressive. Well, let's just say I'm assertive, right? If I walk in and there's
Sure.
kids, like, and I mean, I've done a lot of classes for kids on the spectrum. Like my yoga program is actually developed for children that are completely nonverbal.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
yeah, so like I go for the kids that are really, really struggling. Those are the kids
Mm-hmm.
that I want. And so for me, I don't give up. And if I have to keep going and going longer on a session, I will. I've
Okay.
worked with kids that are blind and deaf. One of them, I mean, it took us, I want to say 6 months just to go from downward dog to jump forward.
Okay.
But I
But
also
you
like
got there.
helped it.
You
Yeah, we
got
got there, but
there.
I also helped his body get there. Now,
Mm-hmm.
some parents might be uncomfortable with that. But you know what? I think I will guide and help and and I will do that. But I do ask permission, of course, for the
Sure.
child. But I think for me, I am more of like, we're gonna do this. And I
Hmm.
don't believe if I have a consultation, you're gonna have a whole plan by the time I'm out the door
Hmm.
within
Okay.
2 seconds. But if you're gonna call me and say, "What are you gonna do?" I'm like, "I don't know. I need to look in your kid's eyes. I need to see the
Right.
dynamic and everything else." And then I'm gonna come in and my goal is to be gone. My goal is to really empower parents to be
Hmm.
better, to understand their child. And then I call tune-ups and I come back and then I do the consultations.
Hmm.
And there. And I mean, I've traveled all around doing this. It's great, but there's ton, if a kid's gonna be wiggly and woggly, I'm like, "Okay, we're gonna stop the music. Let me know when you're ready."
Hmm.
And that's it. "Are you ready now?" "Yep." Boom. And that's how I do it. I'm like, "Let me know. You tell me." And then I just wait them out.
Okay. My Amazon cart will be full of your books by this afternoon. I mean it. So, Vanessa, as we wrap up, do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to share with our moms? Because our moms are coming from all walks of life. We've got all different
Right.
types of folks listening to this podcast. So, do you have any final things you'd like to share with them?
I think it's really important as a parent that you're taking breaks. And if you have a partner that if it's stressful, you guys have a code word to switch.
Mm.
Because I think that's where, one parent starts to, do one more of the discipline or whatever they become in their roles, but being able to take a break and saying, okay, I call it fire drill. When it's a
Hmm.
fire drill, it's like, it's just so intense and like, I need a break. How does that partner know?
Right.
Right. And like, how do you communicate? And I think being able to take care of yourself is a big component on that.
Hmm.
Kids are watching, they're modeling. You have to model this all the time. And I
Hmm.
think the consistency piece is huge and being able to take a break is, I guess the question is letting yourself take a break.
Right. Yeah. And this is funny. This makes me laugh. This is one thing in our entire conversation. I feel like I'm doing okay. My husband and I have this thing where we'll say pod, which stands for parent on duty.
Right.
And if like one of us needs to like clock out for a second, we'll just be like pod. And we just like we'll switch into like whoever needs to have that time. So I
That's
appreciate
great.
you like reiterating that though, because it's true. We can't be good parents if we're not the best versions of ourselves. And I like 100% stand by that.
No, I think that's amazing that you guys are doing that. I think that's great communication. It's great modeling, and just taking care of it. Because I mean, they watch everything you do,
Hmm. They
right?
really do.
Even my book is on my counter, and one of my oldest kid comes. He's like, "I don't understand why you have a book shut up when like we're not allowed to say this at school." And I go, "Listen, there's a reason for it. The reason is parents talk too much." He's like, "But you talk too much too." Like they
Ooh.
tell, and this is the kind of
Mhm.
relationship I have with my kids. Like they will put me in check, and I'm like, "You're right."
Yeah,
I'm not that teacher that's gonna be like, "I can't believe you talked to me that way," where
right.
some people are. I'm all, "You're right, I did that, I messed that one up." But
Mhm.
accountability is huge.
Right, and you're owning it, and you're showing them that it's okay to, like, make mistakes as long as you acknowledge that that's what's going on.
Right.
Ugh, I'm so excited that we had this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. To everyone that's listening, don't forget to hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss the latest podcast episodes. Vanessa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Everybody, be sure to jump onto Amazon and wherever you buy your books and order her book, How to Do Parenting with Confidence. Let's increase those book sales because I know I'm going to be adding to that today. So thank you so much. Herbaland is an earth-friendly company that creates plant-based, high-quality gummy vitamins and snacks packaged in 100% compostable pouches. Their products are made for everyone, including people with diverse dietary needs and preferences. Their natural, plant-based vitamins are allergen-free, non-GMO, and contain low to no sugar. Head to momsmeat.com to see what moms had to say about Herbaland gummies.